Okay,
Nice.
now we're recording.
Now we're
Welcome to another episode of Patriots United for America. And we are well rehearsed for this one.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
We are well rehearsed and ready to talk about a close election, and it'll be almost like we just had this conversation. So it's gonna be very nice or whatever. But yeah,
Neutral football
again, yeah, absolutely. But again, went to bed election night thinking that Donald Trump was still going to be my president. And I was very sad about it. And that's kind of naive because me and you had talked about it before that the policies are very close and we've been prosperous under whichever side has it. I've done really well, you've done really well, your dad's done really well,
Yeah, for sure. For
everybody,
sure.
right? So it was more of an emotional thing, and I just have a
The
personal.
presentation thing, right? It's a he looks bad thing, I think, a lot of the times, isn't it?
Well, it is presentation. Some of it is respect for the office,
Hmm.
presentation, delivery, just respect. And if he wasn't the bankruptcy king, and if he wasn't saved by a reality TV show, and he truly was a business genius, and everything he touched turned to gold, that would be one thing, right? But he's a giant fraud to me, and he's a giant con. And we've discussed before about Kanye West and him and his similarities, that they're geniuses. They're geniuses where they can take something, they can take so little and make it into so much, and
Right.
then make it so relevant where you're talking about it every day, right? It's crazy.
Sure. Yeah. Um, but I know you're celebrating your victory, and
Absolutely.
I can appreciate that. But like I said, I don't think it's over until it's over, and this election is that close. We're talking 1,000 vote margins in some states, and that to me is the astounding part. Is you know the polls gave Biden like a 10-point lead in some of the states, states like Wisconsin and Michigan that did end up going for Biden, but were still very very thin margins.
Yeah,
And I
so it was 76,000 votes last time, right?
right,
76,000 key votes in Philadelphia and Wisconsin. It might have even included Michigan, but I know it's 70,000 something votes. If you look at Philly, uh, the four that were kind of outstanding: Georgia, Philly, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Arizona.
yeah,
That total was like 70,000 votes. It's crazy. It was spread out over four states, but again, just unbelievably close.
hmm
And
for
and
sure,
and the only thing that can explain the polling thing is that people lie. Is that they're just not
yeah.
going to tell you that they're going to vote for Trump. They're
I
maybe
think it's
ashamed of it.
I don't think it's that. I think a lot of it's methods, right? Because who are the
Maybe.
people, I think a lot of it is the methods by which you rich people with that reputable pollers use. Because you don't take internet polls at face value. No one like takes them seriously, and they probably reach a lot of young people and people who are my age and a little bit older who might be voting, right?
Did you
Those
fill out any polls?
I did not know. I didn't. I
Oh,
didn't
so
get.
I didn't either, right? So
I'm saying
um
sampling skews older usually, and the big demographics that Trump lost were not the minorities this time. It was he lost white men support and he lost older people's support. That's what really killed his chance of getting reelected. In fact, he gained in many minority communities. He gained among African Americans. He doubled his vote among African Americans. He gained among the Asian community. He gained in lots of places, and he even gained, I think, with white women, but he did not gain with white men, which was his key demographic in 2016. And I think it's one of those things for Donald Trump in that he didn't fulfill his promises to the base, and they didn't turn out for him. I really think it's as simple as that.
yeah, but you can't really say that, right? Because 71 million people came out and voted for him. I mean, that's
Of course.
remarkable. It's more than any Republican in history has
And
received.
then
So,
Biden broke the record for number of votes received ever. We do have record-breaking turnout, that's for sure.
right. So, I mean, it's crazy that the loser is going to have 71 million votes. That's just remarkable.
And the interesting thing to me is I think voter turnout is generally a good thing. I think people should vote no matter what. I've voted ever since I've been able to. Granted, that's been like 3 years, but in every election, including the midterms, I voted, and I think that's super important because we in this country, um, frankly, undervote and underregister to vote. Some countries have mandatory voting, like Belgium and Australia. We have nothing like that, but voting is something I think that we kind of take for granted, and we should probably do more often. Um, Now, I have lots of right wing friends, and all my right wing friends are shouting fraud, 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 fraud. Um,
There's no basis for that. That's
is
insane.
what makes you say that?
Do you think there was
I'm playing
widespread
the.
voter fraud?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. I hope our elections are more secure than that. But
There's probably fraud in every election, right?
right, right,
And I would say that it's probably equal distribution,
okay.
right? Like there's only small pockets that you can get away with anything anyway. And
But
out of 145 million votes,
right.
I don't think there's any fraud that tilted anything in any way.
But like we said, there were some areas that were very, very close.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying, but if you wanted to do fraud, you would target areas like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. If I were the head of some conspiratorial voter fraud organization that really, really wanted to get Joe Biden elected, what would I do? Well, I would do mail-in ballots in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't think it's the case because I don't think people in this country do that. I hope not. That's kind of my optimism showing. But you know, I think that the Trump administration is within its rights to investigate if there is something going on. That's my take on that. Like, because if there is voter fraud, no matter who's doing it, I think we need to find out who's doing it. Right? We need to find.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now.
I agree with that, but at the same time, you know, let's have a just because it's mail-in voting and just because the not
Right.
in-person voting didn't go your way doesn't mean that those votes are fraudulent. And I haven't seen
Right.
one um, piece of evidence
Right.
or an example of fraud. I haven't seen it anywhere on anything.
Neither have I. And that's why I am very skeptical of people who are saying there is none. There is definitely major fraud, but I'm also skeptical of those who say there is none. I think that launching an investigation to make sure all votes are valid and legal is not necessarily a horrible idea. Though obviously it does appear to be a part of a tantrum, which is not not the best look.
Right,
But
right.
I mean, in general, like I support the principle of making sure that elections are secure. And is the investigation that's ongoing going to be that? I don't know. But Mitch McConnell has not congratulated Joe Biden yet, and that to me means a lot. And the reason I say that is because Mitch McConnell is, for all of his flaws, a very good politician, right? In a relatively secure Senate seat. I mean, the Democrats put a lot of money into winning some Senate seats that they definitely lost. Jamie
Right.
Harrison in South Carolina, they spent like $100 million on trying to unseat Lindsey Graham. That wasn't going to happen, and it didn't. We saw the same thing with what's her name, Amy McGrath in Kentucky. They tried to get these really solid GOP Senate seats, and they failed. Now Georgia is going to be interesting. We're headed for two runoff elections, and that's going to be a immense show. But Mitch McConnell hasn't congratulated Biden yet, and I wonder why that is. What does he know that we don't? Right?
Yeah, so I don't think I think that again is just cunning politics, right? He
Okay.
still needs a lot out of Trump before January 20th.
Okay.
So if he called Biden now, I mean, Trump still runs the show, right? And
Right.
it's
Right. Right.
not clear how much he's going to run the show
For the next two
after he
months.
leaves office. No, even after he leaves office, right?
Oh, within the party. Okay.
He could still be a major force within the Republican Party, right?
Sure. Sure.
I mean, I guess he is. I can't believe it, but I mean, I guess 71 million votes tells its own story. But
Right.
I
For
think
sure.
that it would be very alienating if Mitch McConnell went ahead and jumped on the Biden train and congratulated him and kind of undermined Trump's effort to stay in power. It could make the next it could make
2 months.
next 2 months kind of brutal, right?
Right. So I guess what I'm asking is, I wonder if he knows anything that we don't. Right. I wonder if there's some, bombshell. If you're a Q, trust the plan kind of person, right? Is there
Oh,
some big
Jesus.
bombshell you're going to? I mean, yeah, yeah. I kid, but like, that's where some people are at right now. I mean, I've seen it everywhere of people being like, trust the plan, Trump's going to stay in office, and I've seen it everywhere from advocating dictatorship to overturning voter fraud, the pedophile cults trying to remove Trump and put Biden in power, and then Biden's going to resign and Kamala Harris is going to become president. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if soon into the term Biden were to resign or to, be declared mentally unfit. And frankly, I don't think that really matters, right? He's very old, and so is Donald Trump. Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if things happen with
Absolutely.
Donald Trump. I'm not going to split that either way. Um, but if either one of them, whoever is serving the next term, if they were to step down for their vice president, I would frankly not be surprised.
Yeah, but
Um,
that's not going to happen, man.
I
I mean,
hope not. I hope not.
it's another
It looks
myth or
bad.
whatever.
It
Yeah,
looks
but
bad.
you got Biden, and then you're going to have 8 years of Harris, and then you're going to have 8 years of AOC.
Ooh. I like one
You-
third. I like one third of that. I'm okay with one third of that. I'm okay with
Uh,
AOC. I like AOC.
I do
AOC,
too.
for all of her, not perfect presentation. She's very young, very fresh, and very interesting ideas. Um, and do I agree with all of her ideas? Certainly not. She lists her pronouns in her Twitter bio, and I find that horrible. Um, but I'm somewhat culturally reactionary, so I don't like that. But like the fact that she's talking about things like socialized medicine, I think is a good thing, and that has like a younger voice. I think great, wonderful. Like the Democratic Party's biggest problem is that they lack ideas. They don't lack voters; they lack ideas. And the fact that somebody's coming along and giving them something, I think, is a good thing. Now, people say that Trumpism is dead after this election, and I think the opposite is the case. I think in the next 2024, you're going to have a much much stronger right wing populist force arising. I don't know who's going to be led by, but somebody far more competent than Trump. I
Yeah,
think.
but it is just like Obama spurred the greatest fundraising in history.
Right.
This is just going to do the same thing, right? We're in an arms war, right? So the
Plenty
Democratic
of.
Party just raised more, and now
Yeah.
the Republican Party is going to go to war. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
And just
It's all
think
about the
about
money.
what could be done with that money as
We've
far as
had
feeding
billions in this
people,
election,
right?
billions of dollars in this election. And I was really, really excited for the break from the constant political ads because Georgia is now a battleground state, apparently, right? And now we're going to have them for another few months while we
Oh,
have these two Senate runoffs.
it's ridiculous.
I
It's
was like,
ridiculous. Well,
oh, not again.
I actually like Warnock. There's a lot of people. I was at the racetrack this past weekend, and the
Yeah,
racetrack is a very right wing
right. I'm sure my dad
place.
contributes to that a little bit.
So there, it was a lot of unhappy people, a lot,
Oh yeah.
but it's interesting. Like the dialogue was already there. Voter fraud.
Right, right, right.
Biden's going to step down or die, and Camilla's going to be president in a couple of months.
A couple of
It,
months is a
I
little.
mean, it was crazy. Like, and then like Warnock's a piece of junk, and it was just crazy. Like the whole narrative was just already written, and
I
it
have
was
more. I have more problems with Ossoff than I do Warnock, frankly. But that's
yeah.
just.
I also if they had run anybody else, I think they would have won.
Yeah, that's a. Yeah, right,
Ossoff has just shown that he can't win, and he's also shown that his mom was one of Clinton's major donors,
right.
and has that super PAC and all
Yeah,
that stuff,
yeah,
and they just keep running him. And the dude, if he wouldn't got a job, and he
yeah,
did some real things in life, and worked somewhere and accomplished things,
yeah.
maybe we could talk about voting for him or whatever. And I did, but I don't like him,
Right,
and I understand how Biden got 200,000 people voted for Biden and then voted for Purdue. That's a
right.
problem, right? That means you're running something that's very strange because Purdue is a piece of junk. So,
What's wrong with Purdue?
I can't stand Purdue. I mean, just everything. I mean, they're both of them are sock puppets for Trump. I mean, and even Mitch McConnell. Like Mitch
Yeah,
McConnell is one of the most unpopular people in the country, what they should have, the Ossoff ads should have just shown, um, um,
Pictures of of Purdue and Mitch McConnell.
yeah, really, like, just this is who this is. It's his buddy,
But
and
is
then
Chuck
he
Schumer any more popular and any better? Is my question. You
no, but
know.
he's not relevant, right?
Okay.
So that's the problem, right?
Okay.
So I mean, if
Fair enough.
he's
Fair enough.
this voice in the background that's just talking nonsense, it's not the same as this guy that's running the free world from a Kentucky seat and seems untouchable, and
It reminds me of how, like, in my district, I all the ads for my local congressman were all just Nancy Pelosi ads, like, "Oh, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are gonna, take your freedom," right? And they always run
that's
against
smart.
her. Right, of
That's
course, it's
smart.
very smart because people don't like Nancy Pelosi. No one talked about, like, the squad and how they're like socialists. Everyone was like harping on Nancy Pelosi, which I just think is somewhat counterintuitive, right? Because isn't the whole message of right wing voters like Nancy Pelosi, or not Nancy Pelosi, AOC and the squad are going to take your money? Like, I don't know. I
And
don't know which one.
they're gonna raise your taxes, and then they're
Right.
gonna let the rioters and looters. That was a big argument we got into at the track. Yeah, like everybody was like, well, now there's gonna be all this rioting and all this stuff, and
Mhm.
who's gonna protect us from the rioters? And my point was, who's rioting? Where is all this rioting? Right? It's not like the '60s. In the '60s, they were burning cities down. Right? That's
Chicago,
not
68.
I mean, that's not what's going on here.
Right.
A couple of buildings have gotten burned. A couple of businesses have been destroyed. Let's just say 100 businesses have been destroyed, but nationwide, that is not a large number. Nationwide, widespread looting has not been the case. You've had
It's
little
still
pockets of it.
rather unfortunate and certainly bad optics for anyone who's in power. That's the logic I never understood. Was it's happening under Donald Trump. Why is this Biden's America? Right? Like, why
Right,
is
right,
that the message that you're using? Now, obviously, you could say Democrat-run cities, Democrat-run states.
where people live. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have sand and trees versus people. I think people are more important.
Well, if land voted, I think the Republican Party would handily win every election.
Well,
Um,
it kind of does, right? But
but not as like, of course, a person from Wyoming's vote matters slightly more than a person from California's, right? And
absolutely.
and that's simply like the reality of the electoral college. And I'm not an advocate for getting rid of it. I'm an advocate for changing it. Personally, I like the way Nebraska and Maine do it. I think that makes a lot more sense. Because California has what, 45% Republicans, maybe 40% Republicans, who get no representation in the vote, right?
Right,
And
right.
then, Texas Democrats, who are 48% of the population, also get no representation. So something where you split by congressional district, I think would make a lot more sense personally. Now that would be a fundamental change and not what we're used to, but because we're used to saying one state 100% of the vote, and but I think Maine and Nebraska do it better personally. That's just me though.
This is the first election that I've ever really paid attention to either one of those, that something strange was going on there.
Because they were the chances for the 269 outcome, because if Trump won, he won ME2, but he lost the Nebraska congressional district. And if he had won both of them, I think there could have been like a 269 result, and that would have been, ooh, I mean, we're in like a little crisis right now, but imagine a 269 outcome. That would have
Right.
been much, much worse in
And
regards
Nancy
to, like,
Pelosi breaking the tie.
yeah,
That would have been awesome.
but
That
that
would have
that
been
would have
so
been
much
like
fun.
every right wing conspiracy nuts like worst nightmare. You know, that would have been my worst nightmare if I'm honest, and I'm not a right wing conspiracy nut. I'm a left wing conspiracy nut.
Right.
But like really, of all people that we, of all the people, right, of all the Democratic Party leadership, it had to be that, and it had to end like that. But I'm glad it didn't, or not yet. Like I said, it's not over until it's over.
Yeah, I think it's over. I think it's close. It was very close.
Too
And I'm
close, far too
well,
close.
well, it was close
Because
last. It should not have been this close with the candidate that bad. I feel that
yes,
way.
well, what I'm saying is, if the Democrats had run somebody better, better
Right.
on the policies, more distinct from Trump on the policies,
Right.
you know, I think it wouldn't have been that close. I tell my friends this all the time. If the Democrats had let Sanders win that primary, it would have been much easier. Way easier if they had Sanders and, I don't know, Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, that'd be a good ticket for me. Sanders and Gabbard. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
But
but I mean, Bernie's got such a bad rap
I don't.
with
With
it's
who?
easier to hang a socialist even though he says he's a socialist, he's really not
He's a
most of the
social
time.
democrat. He's
Yeah,
just
right,
like
right.
your center left European politician that there are millions
Absolutely.
of.
Absolutely. But it would have been much easier to vilify him. I'm not sure that he would have won. I think there were better candidates. I know there's better candidates, but they didn't pull them out, right? Maybe Tulsi Gabbard, but
I like Tulsi Gabbard because she goes on against the wars, and I'm like, yes, Tulsi Gabbard.
well, it will be interesting, right? Like just like we were talking about the riots and the
Yeah,
hyperbole around that. There's a lot of hyperbole around war with Democrats and that machine, right? So it'll be interesting to see if we're poking North Korea or Iran right out of the gate on this, or
I
we're
really hope not. That's not.
redeploying to the Middle East, or just any of that stuff. I mean, it would be hard to believe. There's a small voice that says that, and people out there saying that now that Biden's old, and now that he's done and he doesn't have to play politics anymore,
Mhm.
that he's actually going to be much more liberal and much more aggressive, which would be cool to see, right?
That's the FDR argument, right? Is that he'll be pushed left.
Well, I hope. I mean, let's see. I'd like to see ACA overhauled.
Yeah,
It looks like it's holding up in the Supreme Court today, but it's that there's a lot of Americans that got screwed over by that,
right,
and as somebody that runs companies and pays for 75% of the health costs for my employees,
right.
but we're like in a special bubble, and we haven't been exposed to ACA and what's going on with that.
Mhm.
And to me, all I've seen under every president, we has one of my big companies is 14 years old. I've had both left wing and right wing presidents in that 14 years, and the
Right.
one constant thing that's happened throughout the whole thing is rates going up 10 to 30% a year, and
Oh,
coverage going down. What's actually covered, and that's a mess. And
right.
but that's not ACA, right? So we don't have this
Profiteering from insurance companies.
well, we don't have this mandate, and we're not getting having to pick insurance from like a couple of providers in Georgia, right?
Mhm.
We're a national company, and we kind of self insure, and there's all kind of things that we do, but ACA, you don't hear people talk about it a lot. But just recently, somebody was educating me on how screwed over they're getting with ACA, where they're
Mhm.
forced their insurance that really the only options that they have are horrible, and they're expensive, and they have huge deductibles, and it's
Yeah,
just crap insurance, and they can't see their doctors, and it's just like, well, that's valid.
right.
Like that needs to not be like that, right? That's not in
Correct.
anybody's
Absolutely.
interest. ACA was a step in the right direction where you got pre-existing conditions
Conditions.
covered,
Yep.
which is fantastic. You limited the profit margins that the insurance companies can make, but that still left a whole plethora of ways that they can screw the system.
Right.
And then you didn't deal with the cost side of medical care at all, right? You still left that whole thing and the pharmaceutical industry fully entrenched and in charge.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of work to be there. So hopefully
For
he
sure.
takes out a knife and starts slicing that thing up.
I would like to believe that, and I want that to happen. And like I said, when Trump got elected, in 2016, I wish him the best success. Like I want him to do well, and I want the country to do well. Because some people are so sycophantic that they wish ill will upon whether it be Biden or Trump or people in the past, right? I remember when Obama got reelected, people were like, "Oh, this is the end of America," and then there's going to be a Muslim Kenyan in the White House, and then now it's you know uh, the Republican Party's doomed and the country's doomed. So you have those people on both sides who are just, like I said, sycophantic, who just you know have apocalyptic visions for the future. And I'm not one of those people because I think generally we keep going along the same path, probably because our politicians aren't very different. And like you said, right wing or left wing president, your life and your companies generally are pretty much the same, right? They aren't impacted too much. Now, for those of those who are impacted, right? ACA is a good example. Um, Presidential elections really, really matter, and then the Senate races really, really matter, and it matters to a lot of people. But I don't know. I mean, I'm an advocate personally of single payer healthcare. I think we should just bite the bullet and nationalize the healthcare industry. I think that
Absolutely. And
the,
attack the cost side.
yeah, right.
Absolutely.
And the fact is, Medicare costs or healthcare costs are the number one reason people go bankrupt in America. In the wealthiest country, well, second wealthiest by GDP in the world, when adjusted for purchasing power parity, that is. The
But
fact that
that's ridiculous.
yeah,
Like the
it's
people,
ridiculous. Yeah,
well, and you're really not even protected under those bankruptcy laws anyway. So it's just
right.
a big nightmare. They changed the bankruptcy laws,
Yeah,
and then they smash you into bankruptcy with crap healthcare coverage. So
right.
and
We
it's
have
just
like
wrong.
bad coverage that costs more. And
Right.
in regards to the percentage of GDP, healthcare is a lot more than it should be in this country as compared to countries with a socialized system. Um, but then again, I think Americans as a people generally don't take kindly to governments telling them, how your healthcare is going to work, because that's always the argument I see from the right is, it's not about the coverage and how good it is; it's about choice, right? Because remember when Obamacare was, going through the process, people were talking about how you couldn't pick your own doctor anymore. That was like their big thing. It was like, oh, you can't pick your doctor anymore. And that argument's kind of unique to the American political psyche, right? Because we don't like being told who's going to be our doctor. We like picking our doctors, right?
Well, I mean, but that's valid, right? And
For sure, it's valid.
the guy that I was talking to about ACA said he can't. He lost his doctor. He it was like his doctor was out of network or something, and
It's super
he
valid. I'm
couldn't
not
deal
saying
with
it's
it.
invalid, but like in Britain where they have the NHS, you have your GP and that's who you've got, right? But
Right.
we don't take kindly to the kind of the opposite thing. And the ACA, I think the biggest problem is that they took out the public option, which should have been a part of it, which would have forced costs to go down. The fact
Right.
is, we have no public health care in this country, like at all, except Medicaid and Medicare. But for people who are, above poverty line and not over 65, there is no public option. There's only private options, and those private options, are basically medical racketeering.
Right.
And all ACA did, a lot of what ACA did was just provide people a mandate to buy said private health insurance, and it just these costs are spiraling out of control. And I was really hoping that Donald Trump would come out with something during his term because he talked about it a little bit during the campaign. I was hoping maybe he would come out with something that was a different proposal. And I thought, being a populist, he would come out with something that was, for the people, like populists generally do. And of course, he didn't.
You
And
have
that's one
4 years, and they came up with nothing. Like
nothing.
again, it's he's a destroyer. I say it over and over and over. He's a destroyer, not a creator. He doesn't create things; they destroy things. Whether it's in business, whether it's in whatever he touches is he's sucking the life out of it.
And there was some time people were talking about like repealing the ACA. And like, why would you repeal the ACA without something to replace it? If you said, I'm repealing the ACA and introducing socialized medicine, cool. Then I'd be in favor of it, right? Because that's
Absolutely.
right. That's the easiest decision in the world. But the fact is, they were talking about repealing the ACA without replacing it with something else. I'm just like, that's a horrible idea. Like
Absolutely.
that's probably the worst thing you could possibly do because the ACA is like it's like a band-aid on a gaping wound. I feel like, and
Okay, we're coming up on our end here. My alarm's going off here.
oh, well,
So
one more thing before you go. Um,
absolutely.
so the Supreme Court is now pretty stacked in one direction, as we got Clarence Thomas and all the conservatives on that. Do you think that's going to have an impact on the ability of the Trump administration to hang on? Do you think this will go to the Supreme Court, or we're just going to have this talk of staying in office die down after 2 weeks? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
If you can't find widespread fraud, which you're not going to be able to find,
right. There's no way you can hold on.
Yeah, there's no way that you can hold on. And like this court, everybody assumed that they were just going to like shoot down ACA and that they're really right. I mean, there's a lot of conservative people on it.
Yeah.
But they're doing some rational things. And the latest thing on ACA that I saw today that said, hey, we're going to take away some of this mandatory stuff, but it doesn't mean that the whole law goes away.
Right.
That the whole thing's illegal or unconstitutional. And
fair enough.
right. I don't think, that, what would that say if they got that partisan and corrupted an election that was not corrupt? Like that would be like the end of everything. Right. And those guys don't want to be the ones that ended everything. I don't believe it. I don't see it. I don't think Trump's got a prayer. This has been a good episode talking about how close it is and how remarkable the election was, but it's over. It's just over. That military vote that's getting counted in Georgia, that's going to be a split. The military vote was split. He called them losers and suckers, and that just didn't help, right? And the John McCain stuff didn't help, and just he had little things all over the place, and the election was that close, right? Like he didn't need McCain's followers to abandon him. He didn't need half the military to, they would have made a difference. He could have been president for 4 more years if he had just been a little more presentable and a little less of a bad guy.
I love your self-censorship there. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we try to keep the show pretty clean. It's kind of tough sometimes.
Yeah, you're good at it. But I don't know. Like I said, I generally agree with you, but I still think, it's not over until it's over, right? Until 100% of the votes are counted. In 2000, everyone kind of knew that Florida was going to be like the decider, right? And I don't think people compare this in 2000. I'm like, these are not comparable at all.
They're not comparable at all.
2000 was so different. And I don't know. Like I said, I think as someone who looks at international stuff a lot, and people are comparing this to like dictatorship election. I'm like, no, not even close. Like,
absolutely,
it's not that bad. But the fact that having this discussion, I think, is reflective of larger themes. And what those themes are, I don't know. I guess.
Well, that gives us something to talk about next week.
Exactly.
Okay, well, that's another episode. That's a wrap. As always, it's great to talk with you, Griffin. And that's about it.